Today we're going to be talking about mistakes that I made wedding planning. The reality is it's not just your wedding day, but when you're planning a wedding, you can't really do that. I think that it could have been enhanced a little bit more is not being willing to compromise. So before I dive in, I do just want to say that our wedding day was pretty much perfect. So there's not a whole lot that I honestly would go back and change, even if I could, but these are just some things that I want to let you guys know so that if you're planning a wedding, you can avoid these just small mistakes. So the first thing is not shopping around enough for a wedding dress. I personally only went to one place and I ended up getting a wedding dress on that day. I really wish that I had shopped around a little bit more. What I ended up doing was I went to David's Bridal. I honestly was not planning on getting a wedding dress that day when I went to try on dresses there. I was really planning on just getting a feel for what wedding dresses look good on my body. I had an idea of what I wanted. I definitely wanted long sleeves with an open back, which I did get. But I do think now looking back, looking at some other dresses, I think that I could have probably found a dress that was more comfortable, that I would have felt more comfortable in, that was a little bit cheaper if I had looked a little bit more and not just gotten a dress that day. I will go ahead and if I can link the dress that I wore that day, and I will also link some, I guess, dupes that were a little bit cheaper from Lulus, which I think now looking back, I would have liked to have just tried on dresses at David's Bridal and then gone ahead and gone to probably Lulus to find a dress that I think would have been better for me. Not saying that my dress wasn't great, it was great, but it wasn't the most comfortable in the world. It was rather heavy for the day. It was like 90 degrees that day, so I definitely got a little bit warm, and I just think that I could have probably gotten a better dress. The dress that I did get was actually $600, which I know is not that expensive for a dress, but we were planning a wedding on a little bit of a budget, which if you are interested in seeing how we did that and how much we spent on the other areas of our wedding, you can definitely go ahead and check out this video, which will also be linked in the description. The dresses at Lulus are usually under like $200. And I will say I did actually also have to get my dress from David's Bridal altered, so that was an additional, I think, around $300. So even if you were to get something online and it didn't fit perfectly, a dress in a store is probably not going to fit perfectly anyway, so you might as well just get one that's a little cheaper and then have it altered if you're gonna have to get it altered anyway. So the next thing that I kind of regret from planning our wedding is not being willing to compromise a little bit faster. I think that I had this image of my wedding day in my head, and I didn't take into consideration the fact that I was planning it with another human being that also had a vision for what his wedding day looked like in his head. So really the only place that this actually came up a whole lot was choosing the colors for our wedding. My husband wanted a lot of bright colors, whereas I originally wanted black and white. We ended up compromising on a sage green and gray combo, which ended up being absolutely perfect, and that's actually my brand colors now. I liked it so much, so definitely that ended up working out super well. So be willing to make those compromises. I definitely kind of dug my head in a little bit longer than I probably should have. And I should have just compromised a little bit faster, because the reality is it's not just your wedding day, you are planning it with another person, so you have to take their vision into consideration. So that's a huge thing I would have done a little differently. My next thing, which I definitely think some of my bridesmaids maybe would say, is that I probably should have communicated a little better with everyone involved. I tend to be kind of go with the flow and just let things kind of happen, but when you're planning a wedding, you can't really do that. You really need to be on top of letting people know what dates they need to be places, what they need to wear to places, what colors they need to wear, shoes, all of those things in a wedding. Everybody wants to know details on that. The number of people that ask you what they need to wear on the wedding day, it's kind of insane. So maybe put that on the invitation and just make sure that you're communicating it clearly so there's no confusion and everybody knows where they're supposed to be and what they're expected to do. Kind of along those lines, maybe this is just a me thing, but there were definitely some things that needed to be cared about that I didn't necessarily care about. Obviously, when you're planning a wedding, if you don't care about specific things, you don't necessarily have to include them. It's your day, you get to do what you want with it. but there are some things like what kind of food is going to be served on the day that is kind of important. If you want to have a nice party, you want people to stick around, have a good time, they need to be fed and watered and cared for properly. So that was one thing I didn't necessarily care about, and it kind of ended up falling on the shoulders of my family to kind of figure out food. Obviously, I was a part of it, but I could have been a little bit more of a part of it. And I could have, if I didn't care about those things, actually delegated it to them and kind of actually told them like, hey, I need you guys to take care of this because I'm focusing my energy on some other areas. So definitely make sure that all of the boxes are being ticked, whether you are ticking them or someone else is ticking them, and just make sure that those people know that that's their responsibility because you're putting your energy over here. One thing that I will say is the Knot, which is an app, and then also a website, which is actually how we hosted our website. Our wedding website was through the Knot. The Knot has a really good checklist of everything that you need to do when planning a wedding so that you can make sure that you're checking all of those boxes and not letting things that you don't necessarily care a whole lot about slide. One huge thing for the day of the wedding is make sure that you have some sort of food for lunch. If you're having an afternoon wedding, ours was at 5 o'clock, you definitely want to make sure that you are eating and drinking and taking care of yourself up until that point, because you're going to be running around like a crazy person. You're going to be getting your hair done, you're going to be getting makeup done, you're going to be taking photos beforehand, you're going to be setting up the venue. All of those things need to be done on your wedding day, and something that if you do not plan for it, that isn't going to happen, is eating. We didn't plan for lunch, and therefore we didn't really eat, which sucked because there's a lot going on, there's a lot of stress, you're expending a lot of energy, and you need food in order to do all of those things. So definitely make sure that you plan ahead of time for some sort of food on the wedding day. Super important. And then another thing on the wedding day is make sure that you have all of the things that you need for the photographer. This is something that we kind of slipped up on and ended up not having. Our photographer specifically asked for things to do kind of a flat lay with, like invitations, rings. She wanted some things to do some close-up shots with, and we ended up not really having those together. So definitely make sure that you have kind of a package ready for the photographer so that she can get some photos of that type of thing. Our photographer did end up taking some really cool pictures of our rings, but I think they could have been enhanced a little bit more with some of those other things. So make sure you have that together and ready to go before the day of the wedding. Otherwise you're gonna run around like a crazy person and not be able to find an invitation. Like us, couldn't find an invitation anywhere on our wedding day. So make sure you have all of that nice put together in a little package so the photographer can go and get those photos done. And the last thing is, I really wish that Brandon and I would have put together some vows that we could have had in private. We ended up not writing our own vows. We considered it for a little while, but we both tend to be kind of private people that don't want to express that kind of emotion in front of other people. So I wish that during our first look, which we did end up doing, which was great, I think that it could have been enhanced a little bit more and kind of been an even more special moment if we had kind of written letters and commitments to each other that we could have just read to each other or just handed to each other in private to make that moment really special. Obviously those public vows are super, super important, but I think that it could have been even better if we had had that moment. Plus the pictures would have been pretty awesome. So that's one thing that I would suggest if you're kind of that more private person. I think that's a really good idea to have that private moment away from everyone, which again, I definitely think that doing a first look is a really good opportunity to do that. I also have heard of a lot of people recently doing a last dance as everyone else is kind of getting ready for you to walk out. I think having a private dance is a really good idea, so I kind of wish that we had done that as well. So those are just a couple tips for making your wedding day even more special. Okay guys, those are all of my tips and things that I wish that we had done a little bit differently on our wedding day. Again, if you are interested in looking at a breakdown of our budget and everything that we spent on our under $3,000 wedding, make sure that you check out this video. I will also have it linked in the description. If you want any more wedding content, make sure that you comment down below and like this video so that I can know that. I definitely want to provide you guys with all of the wedding content as we've had some time to reflect and learn what we could have done better. And I definitely think I have a lot of wisdom to give you guys on that. So if you're interested in that, make sure comment down below, like this video. And if you're not yet, make sure that you've subscribed so you can see that content coming. I post every Monday at 8 a.m. So turn on the notification bell to get notified when I do post. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye.